Call of Duty Ghosts. It's a name that might bring back nightmares for some. In a time where Call of Duty couldn't miss, a time where the franchise simply couldn't fail, a time where the franchise was at its peak. But the downfall had to start somewhere, and many people cite Ghosts as the game that caused an uncontrollable downward spiral that Call of Duty is yet to recover from. But what made it so controversial? Are there any redeeming qualities? And what is the game like now in 2024? We'll get comfortable and grab some popcorn as I look into whether Call of Duty Ghosts was really that bad. It makes sense then that we start with one of the most polarising multiplayer experiences we've ever seen. By this point, Modern Warfare games were known for a slightly slower gameplay style, with a bit more methodical decision making on larger maps that accommodated any playstyle. Black Ops games, on the other hand, was known for a faster feel, with more free lane maps and arcadey gameplay style. So the first question Infinity Ward had to answer with their new game is, what does Call of Duty Ghosts feel like? And while I'm sure as many of you know, it felt a lot different to any COD game we'd ever played. Take the slowest Modern Warfare game, the original from 2007. Take the largest maps and fast TTK, and add to it the grey filter, and boom, you have Call of Duty Ghosts multiplayer. Now, is that a bit harsh to say? Well, yes. And is that difficult for me to say as a Ghost sympathiser? Also yes, but it's the hard truth. Putting it bluntly, 90% of this multiplayer did not feel like the Call of Duty that everyone loved from the golden era. The main issue stems with those maps, so let's take a look at them. Stonehaven, a beautiful looking map with long sightlines allowing snipers to succeed. But why did it have to be the size of a Battlefield map? Look as I go around this map, how much empty and unnecessary space there is. Think to yourself, have I ever actually been here? Have I ever actually been in a gunfight in this area? Now let's do the same with Siege. Again, as I walk around this map, think to yourself, have I ever been here? Have I ever seen another player step foot in one of these places in a regular online match? But okay, maybe Siege is a bit boring. How about Prison Break? Now we're talking, we're set in a jungle area with a cool tower as a power position. But oh look at all this empty space. Oh wait a minute, don't tell me there's more. How does it keep going on? But wait, there's more. There's foliage to hide in as well. Make it stop. The nightmares, the PTSD from the campers, it's all coming back to me. Please, give me a 3-lane map. Okay, freefall. Okay, this is a 3-lane map. It might be a bit cluttered and ugly, but it's 3 lanes. It should play well. Oh, why is the map falling? What's going on then? Why can't there just be a normal map in this game? Nah, that's more like it. I hope that little section there showed the problem with the maps. With the exception of Strike Zone and Warhawk, which to me are all-time great maps, and Freight and Octane, which are solid 6 or 7 out of 10 maps, the overwhelming majority of the Call of Duty Ghost maps are overly cluttered, have a terrible map gimmick that ruins what could be an okay map, or are so big that you question how they were ever made in traditional Call of Duty multiplayer. I'm going to show you most of these maps, partnered with an on-screen caption that shows what's wrong with them. And as you can see, about 3/4 of them are pretty terrible to play. It's a real shame, because it's the most important component of a Call of Duty game. And I simply cannot defend how bad the design is here, especially when the blueprint for what made a good map was already laid out by the previous games. So as you can tell, maps is not exactly a department where Ghost strives. So what about the weapons? Well, in all honesty, I do really enjoy some of the Ghost weapons, as we will get into later. But firstly, I must mention the time to kill in this game, as it really makes my opinion jaded to the majority of the selection here. Is there a wide selection? Well, yes. But do a lot of them feel similar? Well, unfortunately, also yes. When it only takes a split second to take someone out, the majority of the weapons in the game can get the job done. It's frustrating, because there's so many new weapons in the game, like the ARX or the K7, that could really stand out otherwise. But due to the fast TTK, a lot of them blend into one. Although fortunately, a few of the weapons do rise to the top. The MTAR is an AR and SMG hybrid that feels like it comes with the benefits of both, and can adapt to any map or scenario the game throws your way. The USR was the go-to sniper, and whilst it might not be as memorable as the Intervention or the MSR from previous Infinity Ward games, it still served its purpose well. And finally, my favourite and the biggest standout of the lot, the Honey Badger. It wouldn't be a Call of Duty Ghost video without mentioning this thing. It was a gun that could be effective at all ranges, with a good fire rate, partnered with its decent range and easy recoil pattern. But where this thing took its own role was its integrated suppressor. This meant you could have other attachments including the suppressor, and it removed skulls on the minimap when you took someone out, which was its greatest strength. But importantly too, it gave that iconic sound that every good Call of Duty gun needs, and why for me, it has to be considered amongst the all-time great Call of Duty weapons, despite it not being in the most revered multiplayer. So, it's looking pretty rough for the Call of Duty Ghost multiplayer at this point, but thankfully, there are some redeeming qualities, and as a big Call of Duty Ghost sympathiser, I can't wait to get into them. So let's begin with Infected. Man, do I have lots to say about this mode. It was first introduced in Modern Warfare 3, but this version is hands down the greatest ever. Due to the large maps and abundance of safe spaces and camping spots, it creates a scenario where the maps in Call of Duty Ghost just so happen to work perfectly for Infected. Take Stonehaven for example. Absolutely huge map that is pretty terrible in traditional multiplayer. But then take 18 players, 17 of which will start out as a non-infected, and the majority of whom will run towards this legendary spot in the castle, and you have something to work with. These camping spots are found on every single map in Call of Duty Ghosts, and centralise the gameplay in Infected, as camping with the rest of the lobby is by far the best strategy. The best example is Freefall. Another poor map in traditional multiplayer, but in Infected it comes alive. The Tube, as I like to call it, is probably the most populated camping spot, as players rush it every round to defend its 3 entrances. The windows make it difficult to get in, and make this place a fortress. I could go on for hours about all these spots on every single map, but I'd be here all day. Add to this the Chem Strike that was the ultimate goal for any Infected player, and you have an addictive experience that I could play round after round of without getting bored. And on Xbox, there's still a solid Infected community, so if you're on that platform, it's still possible to play it in 2024, so a big shout out to them. But finally with the multiplayer, the one thing that elevates Call of Duty Ghost multiplayer so much higher is DLC. Dare I say, this is the best DLC cycle we've ever had. They took all the feedback from the community, put in the love and the passion into the maps, and even sprinkled in some classic remakes for the cherry on top. Let's start with DLC 1. This brought us Fog, Bayview, Ignition, and Containment. Containment's pretty meh, so let's just focus on the other 3. Fog is the ultimate Easter egg paradise, with an untold amount of references to classic horror movies. Its atmosphere is unmatched, with the creepy cabin in the foggy swamp really providing for the perfect backdrop for these hidden secrets. Bayview is another stunning map set on a marina boardwalk. The gorgeous aesthetic isn't its only strength, as it provides fast-paced gameplay around the middle area, with tons of flank routes to keep things interesting. Ignition is a remake of one of my favourite maps in the whole series, and much like Black Ops 2 did, they took the original design of Scrapyard and put their own spin on it. This time set in a space launch facility, the sunset that beams through this map gives it a nostalgic feel as you relive the excellent 3-lane layout on this classic. DLC 2 gave us Behemoth, Collision, Ruins, and the Dome remake Unearthed. Again, Unearthed is great as it's got the same layout we know and love, and is somehow more beautiful than the original. Collision is a solid map that feels very frantic due to the congested middle area, and has another cool setting, being on a bridge that's collided with a ship. Behemoth isn't a great map, but the setting certainly makes up for it. And finally Ruins. It's another map that's not great gameplay wise, but again is a unique setting and looks absolutely stunning. Oh, and DLC 2 also came with the Ripper, a hybrid of an assault rifle and an SMG. This thing was so versatile, and I remember how hyped it was when it first came out, as we'd never seen such a unique weapon in the series. DLC 3 provided Pharaoh, Departed, Mutiny, and a faithful recreation of Favela. Favela is the same beauty we know and love from Modern Warfare 2, and works just as well. Departed and Pharaoh are both fun maps, despite being small and large maps respectively, and both come with Easter eggs and references that all these DLC maps are filled to the brim with. Mutiny, however, is my favourite out of the bunch. Set on a pirate bay, the map also features a pirate ship as the main focal point. It's a small to medium sized map with lots of close range engagements approaching the ship, making SMGs the main threat. This map really is the epitome of how good the Ghost DLC is, as it's much smaller than the original maps and better flowing, and the theming is creative and you can feel how much passion and fun the developers have making it. And speaking of fun, the Ghost DLC cycled on with DLC 4 and continues said fun. We ended with Dynasty, Gold Rush, Showtime and Sub-Zero. Despite Showtime being a shipment remaster, it's unfortunately the weakest of the bunch, as it tries to expand the map, and unfortunately it ruins its simple flow. Dynasty and Gold Rush are even more examples of creative settings with cool map elements. And finally there's Sub-Zero, which is such a thrilling map to play, as it feels like wherever you turn, there's always a gunfight waiting to happen. Overall, the Ghost multiplayer really is a mixed bag. At its core, it's not very good, because the mechanics were designed to be very slow, with things like a fast TTK and a lack of a UAV, meaning players did camp. Add to that the original selection of maps that, let's face it, were dreadful, and it created a rough time. But things like Infected and the DLC maps were really able to salvage something from this experience, and they show what Ghost could have been. So I think I'll give the Ghost multiplayer a harsh but fair score of 47 out of 100. The Ghost campaign is another polarising component of the game, but it's one that, on the whole, I'm more positive about than the multiplayer. The story begins with a tale, as Elias Walker tells his sons Logan and Hesh about the ghosts. It's a superb cutscene, as we see some of the best visuals in the franchise that are able to convey this beautiful art style and these scenes that show how outnumbered the Ghost soldiers were. But it was this adversity, this hardship, that was able to create a new force. One that would be feared by the enemy. One that used the environment to their advantage. One called the Ghosts. But for now, this is all just a story. Logan and Hesh have no evidence to believe this is true, so the three of them begin to walk back and continue their lives in sunny California. But it's then when the Federation attack. Using the Odin space station, they brutalise California, and it's 10 years later we fast forward to see the midst of this war. Logan and Hesh are now soldiers in the battle against the Federation. I love these opening missions, as we get to explore this war-torn California. It's a place that we all know and love, as it's absolutely everywhere in pop culture. But the set pieces Ghost exhibits are as beautiful as they are downcast. That constant glow in the background signals hope, but it also signals conflict, and this whole area feels like a shell of its former self. Many people dislike the bland colour palette of Ghosts, and I agree that it becomes tiresome towards the end, but I feel here it's justified, as this is a war-torn city. But it's that constant glow I mentioned that gives it that subtle character it needs. From a gameplay standpoint, much of Ghost's opening missions sees a nice mix of stealth and action, which is cool, but the one criticism I do have is that gameplay-wise, it is a step back from the massively innovative Black Ops 2. Ghost doesn't really innovate gameplay-wise, or take much inspiration from Black Ops 2, but instead follows a similar recipe to that seen from the Modern Warfare trilogy. We continue to battle against the Federation, and during a mission when we must save Ajax, we get our very first glimpse of the main antagonist, Gabriel Rourke. Not too much is known about him yet, but what we do know is that he's evil and leading the opposition forces. Next we find Santa Monica Beach under attack from the Federation. We help fend it off and escape to a building, but we're unfortunately ambushed. All hope looks to be lost, but fortunately for us, the Ghosts are able to save us. However, we still need to find Elias. But as it turns out, this whole time, Elias was a ghost. In fact, not just any ghost, but the Ghost, the commanding officer. He explains to us that once upon a time, Rourke was also a ghost, and in the next mission, we get to see it all unfold. It's one of the more aesthetically pleasing missions in the game, as Elias and Rourke were on a hunt to take out a general of the Federation, and they were successful. But in escaping, Elias had to make a difficult decision, and unfortunately had to abandon Rourke for the betterment of himself and his team. But Rourke had made it out, but he hadn't made it out unscathed. The Federation captured him, and they quickly jumped at the chance to torture him, eventually breaking him and making him join the other side. In fact, Rourke was so useful with his in-depth knowledge of the Ghosts and the tactics they used that he was promoted to leader and quickly began hunting the Ghosts. As much as I like this backstory mission, I would have liked to have seen one more mission building up the relationship between Rourke and Elias and elaborating more on that time period, as it really could have elevated the rest of the story. But either way, we now know Rourke's motivation as a villain, and we understand that he's after us. In our first mission as a Ghost, we head to the Federation capital in Venezuela. It's another visually stunning mission, as it begins with us rappelling down a skyscraper with this incredible lit up city as a backdrop. When we enter the building, we get to see the Ghost tactics firsthand as we stealth our way through, hide in the shadows, and always stay one step ahead of the enemy, no matter how outnumbered we are. We make it through, and find a man by the name of Victor Ramos, who gives up intel on Rourke. With this knowledge, we're able to track him down and finally capture him for an interrogation. But Rourke is rescued, and we end up falling into the jungle. And it's here where the Ghost campaign hits its stride. In this mission, you're left in the jungle with nothing but a pistol and a knife. The Federation are in the area, but they aren't the only thing patrolling the jungle, and there's always this looming threat in the background. The game allows you to take on the role of a ghost and go full stealth, and it's actually possible to do the whole mission without breaking stealth, which suits the idea of being a ghost superbly. But the spectacle of weaving your way through this dense jungle, through the unknown, is just so cool. I love when Call of Duty does stealth missions in general, but this has to be one of the best, just because of how much it encapsulates the idea of being a ghost, and I would love to see more of a focus on missions like this, as it would have given the Ghost campaign more character. Over the next few missions, we continue the battle against the Federation. Again, there's a presence of stealth and action, and jaw-dropping set pieces as we close on the secret weapon that the Federation has been hiding, turning out to be more space weaponry. But it eventually leads to the Ghost getting captured, and by none other than Rourke. It's here where you feel the animosity built up by Rourke. Logan and Hesh are forced to watch as Rourke explains why he's hunting the ghosts, and gives some insight into how he was left behind. But Rourke didn't just bring us here to speak, as he quickly turns the gun to Elias, and in a brutal and emotional scene, executes him right in front of us and Hesh. By this point, Rourke has gone over the top with power, and must be stopped by any means necessary. With Elias gone, it's time to put back on the mask and begin the final act. Firstly, we frantically save our ship and see the new Federation weapon firsthand. All the attention now is on taking out that super weapon, and we fight them on the ground and up in space, which is an incredible spectacle. Despite fighting against the toughest of the Federation forces, we manage to stop their super weapon. But amidst this chaos, Logan and Hesh manage to get up on the train Rourke is on. In a scene akin to the end of Gears of War, we storm the train and chase down Rourke. Suddenly we reach him, but he's able to overpower us as we take out his guards. He shoots Hesh, and all looks to be over, but fortunately, Hesh is able to call in one last favour from the ghosts. A missile hits the bridge, and all three of us go crashing into the water below. But it's still not over, and the drama only intensifies as now submerged underwater, we both battle Rourke, and finally put a bullet in him. We save Hesh and swim out, and the two brothers are able to look at their hard work. It may look like the end of the world, but in reality, the world has been saved. The heroic music plays, and you think back and recall an epic game. The war has been won, but then...
Logan! Logan!
In a shock ending that no one saw coming, Rourke emerges and grabs a weakened Logan, gives us a monologue and then both taking down the ghost together, and then boom, the game ends. That final mission is dramatic as Call of Duty gets, with twists, turns, and a cliffhanger ending that left us all wondering what's next. But it's been 11 years, and we still haven't received a sequel. It's so frustrating, because Infinity Ward really created a solid new storyline here, and they weren't able to wrap it up properly. That's probably why the campaign doesn't get appreciated enough. Certainly from a story perspective it's a shame, but from a gameplay standpoint, I must say I was surprised going back and playing Ghosts, as it exceeded my expectations. Now as I said, I would have liked another backstory mission with Rourke, and maybe one more stealth mission where all the odds are stacked against Logan. But on the whole, the Ghost campaign flows very well. The start is very action heavy, and builds up this idea of being a ghost, and once you become a ghost, you really embrace the mask and get to use all these stealthy tactics. The action is then brought back for a thrilling final act, and it feels justified given the stakes. One final thing Ghost gets criticism for is looking too bland and not standing out. In certain missions I get it may look similar, but in others, I think Ghost does an outstanding job, and I'm showing on screen some of my favourite examples of the true beauty Ghost is hiding away. On the whole, I really enjoy this campaign, and having replayed it, I can say for a fact it's not just nostalgia talking, so I'd rate it a solid 71 out of 100 score. When you think of a third mode in Call of Duty, I can guarantee you instantly look at zombies, or maybe even Spec Ops. But one mode that's largely forgotten and pushed to the wayside is Extinction. But what is Extinction? Well, to tell you that, I have to give you a walkthrough of the first map, Point of Contact. This map takes us to Colorado. At the starting point of this outbreak, Tasked with destroying the hives, you must progress through this town and use the drill, whilst also fighting off this new species called the cryptids. The gameplay loop begins very simple, as we place the drill and fend it off from the default cryptid enemies. But as we progress, and our weaponry becomes better, and we upgrade our soldier using the skill tree, so does the enemy. Throughout Point of Contact's 3 main areas, we're introduced to a wide variety of new enemy types to spice up the gameplay. Firstly, the scorpions, who can use ranged attacks and splash damage to attack the player, and always have to be taken care of immediately. Next we have the seekers, who spawn in their numbers and rush frantically towards the player, and you must take them out before they explode. And finally, the rhino, who makes the last portion of the map very tough. The rhino has insane amounts of health, partnered with its ability to deal massive damage. They may be sparse in appearances, but when they spawn, you certainly know about it. But eventually, you would have taken out all the hives, and then it's time to get out of there. In an epic end, you must sprint back to the helicopter, all the way through the map, with all the aforementioned enemies chasing you. It is a decent opening level that gets us used to a concept of what Extinction is, and it was a challenge when the game came out. But moving into the DLC cycle, Extinction needed something a little bit more to stand out. And well, with DLC 1, we've got the map Nightfall. Nightfall is set in a snowy compound in Alaska, and follows us attempting to find Samantha Cross, who is a part of the Nightfall program, which was a project set to allow humans to control the cryptids. Gameplay wise, and it starts off similar to the first map, just with an increased difficulty. We have one new feature at the start though, in the form of lockers, which can be opened using locker keys, and provide weapons with full attachments. It's not until the end of Nightfall where we get to see its true innovation. Firstly, we see the introduction of the mode's first wonder weapon, the Venom X. The Venom X is an extremely powerful weapon that shoots out explosives that can be detonated by the player, dealing huge damage, but also leaving a gas-like effect that kills anything that enters its proximity. And secondly, we see the introduction of a boss fight. This was actually the first ever big boss fight in Call of Duty, and it was a good start. The Breeder is a tough boss, with multiple attacks like this big frenzy of bullets that you must avoid at all costs. But with the Venom X, it's no match. Nightfall was a step in the right direction, and Extinction was certainly gaining some steam. That being said, I believe DLC 2 and Mayday was the best Extinction experience we got to see. Set on a ship in the middle of the ocean, with stormy weather a permanent fixture, the atmosphere is simply immaculate. It's another mission that escalates in difficulty, with more cryptids to fight. So to tackle this, Mayday introduces schematics. Schematics are used to craft powerful equipment, or one of the 4 Venom X variants introduced on the map. They're also very useful when taking out the boss of the map. I mean, it really is no secret how astonishing this boss fight is, as we get to fight the literal Kraken. I don't think Mayday can be topped, as it's the perfect blend of atmosphere, difficulty and spectacle, which make it such an awesome map, and it's definitely the one I'd recommend the most. DLC 3 saw the penultimate Extinction map, and brought us another solid addition in the form of Awakening. This time we enter the Cryptid Hive in something reminiscent of Gears of War. It's a beautiful place, but as we enter the unknown, you can't help but wonder how mythical this place could be. Whilst this map is good and it does progress the story well, I can't help but see a huge missed opportunity here. The build-up of entering this place was so intimidating, yet the enemy types are much more of the same, with a couple new ones, but nothing that was as scary as the place deserved. And finally, Extinction would end with the map Exodus. Again, from a story perspective, Exodus is solid, as we battle against the Ancestors, who are by far the most dangerous threat so far, and it mostly wraps up the ongoing story of Samantha Cross. It also differs its own map design, with it being far less linear and instead more open, with the player allowed to choose where to go. The new wonder weapon is also fun, and the setting feels very apocalyptic, which is fitting. Despite all this, however, I just don't think Exodus does enough to be considered close to the others. Although I like the innovation, I actually prefer the linearity of the other maps, as I think it suits the gameplay mechanics more. It's a shame they could never do better than Mayday, as with the first 3 maps they were really onto something. But with the last couple of DLCs, it felt more story focused than gameplay focused, which is a bit disappointing. Overall though, Extinction is a fun mode. It has long-term progression like its own prestige system, and a thief system which opens up permanent unlocks and is a massive grind in itself. I think I can therefore justify giving Extinction a solid 60 out of 100 score. Call of Duty Ghosts came out at a time where everything about a Call of Duty game had to be perfect. and unfortunately, much of Ghost wasn't. It tried to create a new universe, but due to its shortcomings, it failed in that aspect too, and as a result, much of its successes were lost in time. Despite its many flaws, particularly the ones that shine for its multiplayer, it does do many things well, and in all honesty, deserves a sequel, as I and many others want to see what the series could have become. But overall, I'd rate Call of Duty Ghosts 55 out of 100. Listen, that is a really tough score for me to give, as I love this game, and I do have a soft spot for it. But I have to acknowledge that a lot of that is nostalgia talking. The multiplayer tried something different, and I respect that, but it fell flat. Extinction was decent, but it was clear it was never going to grow into something more by the 4th and 5th map, and therefore could never surpass Zombies. And finally, the campaign is by far and away the best aspect of the game, and still holds up. But what would you rate Ghosts? Be sure to let me know down in the comments. But I've been Ranger, and this has been my Call of Duty Ghosts retrospective.